Marcus Webb had been sitting at table 7 for 11 minutes when he realized the mistake. He was still in his work clothes, flannel shirt, jeans with a paint streak on the left knee inside a candlelit Italian restaurant on Farmington Avenue that he could not afford and had not chosen. Ray had texted him at 4:15, "Hold the table. You're doing me a favor." Marcus had believed him. He was still believing him when the front door opened and a woman walked straight toward him with the certainty of someone who already knew how the evening would end. She stopped, looked at him, and said nothing for 3 full seconds. Then she looked down at the empty chair across from him and back up. "I don't think you're who I'm here for." Marcus stood anyway. "No," he said. "I'm not." She came expecting one man and found someone else entirely sitting at her table. What made Claire Donovan stay instead of walk away? Subscribe and hit like, because that one decision changed everything for both of them. His phone buzzed before she could respond. Marcus glanced down Ray again. He read the message once, read it a second time, and felt the particular humiliation of a man who had trusted someone he should have questioned. The text said, "Bro, I signed you up for a blind date. Donna's friend. You need this. You're welcome." Marcus set the phone face down on the white tablecloth and looked up at the woman still standing across from him. "My coworker," he said. "He signed me up without telling me. I thought I was holding a table." He said it plainly, without dressing it up. There was no version of this situation that benefited from decoration. Claire Donovan looked at him for a moment. Then she looked at the chair. Then she looked toward the door, the way a person does when they are calculating distance. The waiter arrived at exactly the wrong moment with a small plate of bruschetta and set it between them with professional indifference, as though the awkward stillness on both sides of the table were perfectly ordinary, which, in his line of work, it probably was. Neither of them moved. The bruschetta sat there between them, warm and unhelpful. "Donna told me I was meeting someone," Claire said. Her voice was measured, not cold, but precise in the way that people are precise when they have learned that imprecision costs them. "You were supposed to," Marcus said. "I'm sorry about this. If you want to leave, I completely understand." She did not leave. She stood at the edge of the chair for another moment, and then she sat down, and Marcus could not have told anyone exactly why, because she did not explain it. She simply made the decision, and then the decision was made, and that was that. The early part of the meal was careful in the way that conversations are careful when neither person has agreed to have them. They talked about small things. The restaurant she had been here before, he had not. The neighborhood she worked nearby, he had done electrical work on a building 2 blocks east about a year ago. The bread, which was good. They agreed on the bread without difficulty. Then she asked what he did for work. The question was natural, casual, the kind people ask at dinner tables all over the country, and Marcus answered it the same way he always answered it. "Electrician," he said. He had learned over the years to watch for the reaction that sometimes followed. A slight recalibration, a subtle adjustment of expectation. Some people hit it well. Some didn't bother. Claire Donovan did neither. She simply nodded, as though the information were exactly as ordinary as it was, and said, "Do you have your own crew, or do you work under a contractor?" He was not expecting the follow-up question. "Crew of 4, he said. "We're working a commercial job downtown right now. Should wrap up in about 6 weeks. She nodded again. She was listening, not performing listening. There was a difference, and he noticed it. "What about you?" he asked. She told him. Not with fanfare, not with the studied modesty that sometimes accompanied the revelation of success, just the facts in order. The company name, the sector, her role. She said she ran things and left it at that. He found this more interesting than the people who spent 10 minutes explaining what they did while really explaining how impressive it was. The food came. They ate. The conversation found a kind of unsteady rhythm, catching and releasing the way conversations do when two people are genuinely unsure what they are doing at the same table but are not quite ready to admit it out loud. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Marcus realized he had stopped thinking about Ray's text. The evening turned somewhere around the time the pasta arrived. Claire had set her fork down for a moment and was looking at her wine glass with a slight distance in her expression, the kind that appears when someone is deciding whether to say something they have not said in a long time. "Can I ask you something?" she said. Marcus said yes. "How long ago did your wife pass?" He looked at her. He had not mentioned his wife. He had mentioned Lily in passing something about needing to get back before 9. Something about the woman watching her, and Claire had filled in the rest with a quiet accuracy that unsettled him slightly. 3 years, he said. February. She nodded. She did not say she was sorry in the way people say it when they do not know what else to say. She just nodded, and the acknowledgement was more decent than the condolences would have been. "My father," she said. 3 years ago, also, not the same thing. But I understand something about the shape of it." Her hand rested on the edge of the table and tightened almost imperceptibly around nothing. Marcus noticed it. He did not comment on it, and she did not offer more, and somehow the silence that followed was not uncomfortable. He excused himself a few minutes later to take a call, the woman watching Lily, checking in. He stepped toward the front of the restaurant, listened, said he'd be home by 9:30, thanked her, and ended the call. When he turned back, he could see Claire at the table from a distance, and she was looking at something in the middle distance with an expression that was different from the one she had worn all evening. Quieter, less constructed, and then she seemed to notice something, possibly the direction of her own thoughts, and a faint smile crossed her face before she could catch it or decide whether she wanted to. She did not see him watching. He looked away before she looked up. He did not know her company was the one whose project his crew had just won the bidding on. He had seen the name on his phone screen when she declined a call midway through dinner. Donovan and Mercer Capital, and it had landed somewhere in the back of his mind, with the delayed weight of something he recognized but had not yet placed. He placed it in the parking lot afterward, standing next to his truck, the cold Connecticut air coming off the river 2 blocks west. He stood there for a moment, turning his keys over in his hand. It was a coincidence. It was a large coincidence. He decided it was not his problem to solve tonight, got in the truck, and drove home to Lily. Hartford in November had a particular quality to its mornings. The light came in low and gray, as though the sky were still deciding, and the cold was the kind that settled rather than bit, patient and thorough. Marcus arrived at the Caldwell Street site at 7:15, same as always, thermos in one hand and his hard hat under his arm. He liked the early hour. The site was quietest before 8, before the general contractor's crew doubled in size and the subcontractors started overlapping schedules, and the noise became a constant background condition of the day. His crew was already pulling wire on the 3rd floor. Marcus checked in with Danny, his lead, confirmed the schedule, and went up to the 6th floor where a panel installation had stalled the day before. He liked the problem-solving part of the work, liked the clarity of it. Either the circuit was right or it wasn't, and you could test for the truth without anyone's opinion getting in the way. Around 2 in the afternoon, the site foreman, a stocky man named Hector who wore the same green vest every day, regardless of weather, came up to the 6th floor and told him the building owner's rep was coming through at 3. "Owner's rep?" Marcus said. "New development group?" Hector said. "Donovan something. They do a walkthrough every few weeks. Should be quick." Marcus went back to the panel. He did not think about it again until he heard the elevator open on the 6th floor at 3:12, and he turned to find Claire Donovan walking off it. She was not dressed the way she had been at dinner. She wore a blazer and dark slacks and carried a folder, and she was mid-sentence when she stepped into the space talking to the man beside her, a broad-shouldered man in his early 50s, with silver at his temples, and the specific manner of someone who had spent decades learning how to make authority look casual. The man scanned the floor the way someone does when they are auditing rather than inspecting. Claire saw Marcus at the same moment he looked up. Neither of them spoke. The moment had a duration not long, but long enough to be noticed. Long enough that the man beside Claire turned his head to see what she was looking at. Marcus held her gaze for the 3 seconds it took him to understand that this was real. that she was here, that the name on the phone screen 2 nights ago had not been a coincidence after all, but the simple and somewhat inconvenient truth. Then he nodded. Once, the way a person nods when they are acknowledging something they cannot quite categorize. Claire looked away first. She turned back to the man beside her and continued the sentence she had left in the air, and the walkthrough continued as though nothing had interrupted it. The man, Marcus would learn later his name was Gerald Pruitt, that he held some kind of senior position within Claire's company, glanced back at Marcus once more before following Claire toward the east corridor. The glance was not hostile. It was something quieter than hostility and somehow less comfortable. The look of a person who had noticed something and filed it, and whose filing was not neutral. Marcus turned back to the panel. His hands did what they knew how to do. His mind took a few minutes longer to settle. After the walkthrough, he heard the elevator doors again and the sound of the group moving back toward the lobby. He did not go down. There was nothing to go down for. He stayed on the 6th floor until nearly 5, finished the conduit run on the east wall, and then packed up and headed for the stairs. The sky outside had gone the color of old pewter by the time he crossed the parking lot. He was halfway to his truck when he saw her. Claire was standing near a dark sedan at the far edge of the lot, talking on her phone, one hand in her coat pocket. She did not see him at first. Gerald Pruitt was beside her. Marcus heard the tail end of something the man said, not the words, just the tone, which was the tone of someone providing guidance that had not been asked for. Claire's posture changed by a small but visible degree, not submission. Something closer to restraint. Marcus kept walking toward his truck. He was not involved in whatever that was. He unlocked the door, set his bag on the passenger seat, and then heard his name. Not his name exactly, his truck door. She had ended the call, and Gerald had apparently said what he needed to say and walked toward the building entrance, and now Claire was standing in the parking lot looking in Marcus's direction. He got out of the truck. They met somewhere between the two vehicles, in the middle of the lot, and stood there in the cold with the sounds of the city at a distance. "I didn't know," she said. He looked at her. "Know what?" "That you worked here. On this project." Marcus looked at the building behind her, then back at her. "I saw the name on your phone the other night. Didn't put it together until after." He paused. "Should be a problem?" She held his gaze. "I don't know yet." He nodded slowly. "Neither do I," he said. The wind moved through the lot. Neither of them said anything else for a moment, and then Claire said good evening and walked to her car. And Marcus got into his truck and drove home, and Lily was at the kitchen table with her markers and her volcano project, and she looked up when he walked in and said, "You're late, Daddy," and he said, "6 minutes," and she said, "That's still late." And he laughed for the first time all day. The Saturday after the walkthrough was the kind of November day that Hartford occasionally produced as a reminder that the season was not entirely without grace, cool and bright, with the particular clarity of light that comes after a week of clouds. Marcus took Lily to Bushnell Park because she had been asking since Tuesday, and because he had no good reason to keep saying, "Not yet." Lily ran ahead the moment they passed through the gate, the way she always did, as though the park itself were a destination she had been separated from too long. Marcus followed at the pace of a man who had learned that children's energy was best appreciated from a moderate distance. She found the scarf on a bench near the carousel. She almost ran past it, then doubled back the way she doubled back for anything that caught her attention. Sudden, decisive, entirely committed. "Daddy," she called. "Come, look." It was a small silk scarf, folded neatly on the bench as though someone had set it down with every intention of returning and then failed to. Pale gray, the color of the morning sky. Marcus bent to look. In the lower corner, in small embroidered letters, Claire D. He straightened up. He looked at the scarf. He looked at Lily, who was holding it with both hands and examining it the way she examined things that interested her with complete and transparent focus. "We should put it in the trash," Marcus said. "Someone lost it." But it has a name on it, Lily said. That means it's important. Before he could respond, he heard footsteps on the path behind them, the particular rhythm of someone who had been running and had slowed down. He turned. Claire Donovan was standing 10 feet away on the path, earbuds in, her phone in one hand. She had stopped when she saw them. She pulled one earbud free. Lily looked at her. "Is this yours?" she said, holding up the scarf. Claire looked at the scarf, then at Marcus, then back at Lily. "Yes," she said. "I think I left it this morning." "We were going to put it in the trash," Lily reported, "but I said no because it had your name." "You were right," Claire said. She came forward and took the scarf from Lily's hands with a quiet thank you that was directed entirely at Lily and not performed for anyone else. "My dad knows you," Lily said. "Don't you, Daddy?" Marcus looked at his daughter, then at Claire. "We've met," he said. Lily accepted this as sufficient and announced she was going to the slide, and within seconds she was gone, and Marcus and Claire were standing beside the bench in the November light without anyone to mediate. They sat down, not because either of them planned to, but because standing with nowhere to go felt more awkward than sitting. Marcus set his forearms on his knees and looked out at the park. Lily had reached the slide and was demonstrating to another child the correct technique, which apparently involved going faster than the adults preferred. "She's certain about things," Claire said. "Always has been," Marcus said. They sat for a while, not talking about the site, not talking about Gerald Pruitt or the look he had given Marcus in the corridor or the things he had said to Claire in the parking lot, not talking about the fact that this was the third unexpected time they had been in the same place in a week. The park asked nothing of either of them. The light fell through the bare trees and across the path and across the bench, and Lily's voice carried from the direction of the slide. And Marcus thought that just sitting somewhere quiet without an agenda, was something he had not done in longer than he could clearly remember. When they finally spoke again, it was about nothing consequential. A question she asked about the park, something he said about how Lily had named the bronze bear statue on the North Path Gerald, which had been funny before last week and was slightly funnier now. Claire smiled at that, and it was a real smile, unguarded, the kind that changes a person's whole face for a second before they've decided whether to have it. Lily came back eventually, breathless and satisfied, and declared that Claire should come see the bear. And so they went. The email arrived in Claire's inbox at 7:43 on Monday morning. She read it at her desk with her coffee still hot, and she read it twice. It was from Gerald Pruitt, copied to 2 members of the board, Harrison Wolfe and Patricia Mead, and it was framed, as Gerald framed most things, as a gesture of care. He wrote about professional standards. He wrote about the importance of maintaining clear boundaries between executive leadership and project contractors. He did not use the word optics, but it was present in every sentence, the way a smell is present in a room after the source has been removed. He did not name Marcus. He did not need to. Claire set her coffee down and read it a third time. Then she closed the email and opened her calendar and looked at her week and continued with her morning. She was reviewing an asset summary on the 14th floor when her phone rang. It was Hector, the site foreman from the Caldwell Street project. Hector was not someone who called her directly, that was not the established channel. She answered. He told her that a representative from the company's legal department had come to the site that morning and asked to meet with one of the electrical contractors. He said the man had been given a document to sign. He said the man had not signed it and had left without a word. He said he thought she should know. Claire thanked him, ended the call, and sat for a moment with her phone face down on the table. She called the legal department. She asked, in a voice she kept entirely level, who had authorized the preparation of a non-contact agreement for a subcontractor on the Caldwell Street project. The person on the other end of the line took a moment before answering. The answer, when it came, was Gerald Pruitt and a vice president named Tom Carver, who had apparently signed off without asking why. Claire thanked the person in legal and ended the call and stared at the window for approximately 30 seconds. Then she stood up, picked up her folder, and walked down the hall to the conference room where Gerald Pruitt was holding his weekly project review. She did not knock. She came in and set nothing on the table and looked at Gerald, who was mid-sentence with 2 junior staff members, and said, "I need 5 minutes. Now." The junior staff left. Gerald leaned back in his chair with the practiced ease of a man who had survived many difficult conversations by appearing comfortable during them. Claire did not sit. She stood at the end of the table and told him, without raising her voice, what she knew. She told him that documents issued by her company's legal department required her authorization when they pertained to vendor relationships she was personally aware of. She told him that if she discovered another instance of action taken in her name without her knowledge, she would request a full audit of his personnel decisions going back 2 years. Gerald said nothing for a moment. Then he said that he had been trying to protect her. From what? Claire said. He did not answer that. She left the conference room, took the elevator back to her floor, and picked up her coffee, which had gone cold. By 5:30, the construction site had gone quiet. Most of the crews had wrapped by 4, and the remaining work was the kind done by the last few people who stayed, not because they had to, but because the job was almost done, and leaving it unfinished for the night felt wrong. Marcus was one of those people. He sat in his truck, eating a sandwich he had packed that morning, parked near the site entrance, with the cab dark and the heater running low. He heard the car before he saw it. Headlights came into the lot slowly, the way a driver moves when they are not certain they belong somewhere. The dark sedan stopped 15 feet away. The engine ran for a moment. Then Claire got out. She walked to his window and knocked twice on the glass. He rolled it down. She looked at him in the pale light from the building. She had a folder under one arm and the expression of someone who had spent the better part of the day deciding exactly what to say and had now arrived at the moment when it had to be said. "I didn't authorize that document," she said. "I want you to know that. Gerald acted without my knowledge." Marcus looked at her. He had spent most of the day thinking about it, the legal rep, the form with its careful language, the way it had been delivered with the confidence of something official and approved. He had set it on the table and walked out and gone back to work and not mentioned it to anyone on his crew. "I know," he said. She looked at him more carefully. "How? Because if you'd wanted to handle it that way, you wouldn't have said what you said in the parking lot on Thursday." He paused. "And because you came here tonight." Claire held his gaze for a moment. Then, something in her expression settled, not softened exactly, but resolved, like a decision that had been in process and had now concluded. "I'm sorry it happened," she said. "Don't sign anything either," he said. Something flickered across her face. She said good night, walked back to her car, and drove out of the lot. Marcus finished his sandwich. He drove home. Lily was already in bed, but she had left a drawing on his pillow, a horse with wings, which she had been working on and off for 2 weeks. He put it on the nightstand and turned off the light. The weekend arrived the way weekends do in November, without fanfare, without the particular warmth that makes weekends feel like rewards. But Lily had been talking about showing her new painting to someone specific, and Marcus had said he would ask, and he had asked, and Claire had said yes. She arrived at the house on Elm Street at 2:30 on Saturday. She came in and said hello to Lily, who was already stationed at the kitchen table with her art spread across it in the comfortable chaos of someone who has claimed a space and intends to keep it. The painting was on a piece of poster board, roughly the size of a placemat, mounted with painter's tape to the cabinet above the toaster. Lily presented it with both hands extended, the way people present things they have made with complete and unironic confidence in the value of what they have produced. Claire looked at it. In the painting, 2 figures stood in what was identifiably a park, the flat green, and the bright sky that children use when they want to be clear about outdoor settings. One figure had dark hair and a flannel pattern on its shirt. The other stood slightly apart, holding something small and gray. "That's the scarf," Lily said, pointing. "You're holding it because Daddy was going to put it in the trash, but you kept it anyway." She said this without judgment, simply as a statement of the narrative as she had understood it. "I did keep it," Claire said. "I think that was the right decision," Lily said gravely. Marcus, standing in the doorway to the kitchen, watched Claire look at his daughter with an expression he could not fully name, something careful and genuine at once, the face of a person encountering something they were not braced for and had decided, in real time, not to protect themselves from. He went to make coffee. When he came back, Claire was sitting at the kitchen table across from Lily, and Lily was explaining the mechanics of how to get the right orange when you only had red and yellow, a problem she had apparently been working on for some time. Claire was listening with the same focus she brought to things that mattered to her professionally, which was to say that she was completely present and asking the right questions. Marcus set a mug in front of her and one in front of himself and leaned against the counter and did not say anything, because the scene did not require him to. Later, after the painting had been re-evaluated and Lily had moved on to a new project involving a dragon that was also, according to her, a kind of horse, Claire stood up to carry her mug to the sink and paused at the shelf near the window. There was a photograph there, Marcus and his wife on a summer day, early years, both squinting a little in the sun, both smiling in the way people smile when they are not thinking about the photograph, but about whoever is just behind the camera. It was a simple photograph. It had been on that shelf for 3 years, and Marcus had never considered moving it. Claire looked at it for a moment. She did not ask about it. She set her mug in the sink and turned back to the room, and Marcus did not explain, and the afternoon continued. He thought later, driving Lily to her grandmother's house that evening, that the not asking and the not explaining had been more intimate than anything else that had happened all day. Some things were understood by the decision not to make them into questions. The board meeting was held on a Tuesday in the main conference room on the 34th floor, with 9 members present, and the city laid out below the windows in the particular flat November light that made everything look like a map. Claire had known about it for 3 days. She had prepared for it the way she prepared for things she considered adversarial, quietly, completely, without discussing her preparation with anyone except her general counsel, a careful woman named Susan Archer, who had worked with Claire for 6 years and chose her words the way surgeons choose instruments. Gerald opened the session with remarks about company performance and trajectory, which were accurate and beside the point. Then, with the methodical patience of someone who had planned his pacing, he transitioned. He spoke about leadership consistency. He spoke about the vulnerability of executive image during active capital raises. He used the word entanglement once, carefully, as though he had field-tested it and found it produced the correct reaction. 3 members of the board listened with the particular attentiveness of people who had been pre-briefed. 2 others, a woman named Carol Sims and an older man named Robert Hatch, sat with their hands folded and their expressions neutral, which was their version of disapproval. Gerald proposed a motion. He worded it in the language of policy, that the company adopt a temporary standard requiring executive leadership to disclose personal relationships with active vendors or contractors for the duration of any related project engagement. He framed it as best practice. He framed it as protection. He did not say Marcus's name. He did not need to. The room was quiet when he finished. Gerald looked at Claire with the expression of a man who believed he had been thorough. "We'll take a vote," said Harrison Wolfe, who was acting chair for the session. Claire let the pause develop for one full breath. Then she picked up the pen in front of her, looked at it, and set it back down. "Before we vote," she said, "I want to read something." She opened the folder Susan had prepared. She read aloud the relevant section of the company's foundational governance charter, a document drafted 15 years ago, reviewed and affirmed at every annual meeting since, including the one 18 months ago at which Gerald Pruitt had been present. The section pertained to board authority over executive personal conduct. It was specific. It described the conditions under which such authority could be legitimately exercised. Those conditions required documented evidence of a quantifiable conflict of interest, not the appearance of one, not the possibility of one, but a specific, verifiable, material conflict with a direct financial impact on the company. She closed the folder. "The motion as written does not meet that threshold," she said. She looked at Harrison Wolfe. Then she looked at Gerald. "If anyone in this room has evidence of a specific, verifiable conflict, financial records, documented preferential treatment in bidding, anything that rises to the standard described in our own charter, I'd ask you to present it now." Nobody presented anything. Gerald started to speak. Claire waited. He stopped. The vote did not happen. Harrison Wolfe noted for the record that the motion had not been formally seconded. Two of the three members who had been pre-briefed looked at Gerald Pruitt. Gerald looked at the window. The meeting ended 22 minutes later. People filed out in the quiet way that follows a room where something has been decided without being fully said aloud. Carol Sims squeezed Claire's arm briefly as she passed. Robert Hatch nodded once from the door. Claire gathered her folder and walked to the elevator and pressed the button for the lobby. She needed air. She needed 12 floors of descent and 40 feet of open sidewalk and the feeling of November on her face. She called Marcus from the street. He picked up on the third ring. She could hear Lily in the background, the particular register of a child in a car, talking to herself or to a toy or to the passing scenery with no particular expectation of response. "Are you free Friday evening?" Claire said. A pause, then Lily's voice, clear and immediate. "Say yes." Marcus laughed a quiet, uncalculated sound. "Friday works," he said. "Good," Claire said. "Same restaurant." She put the phone in her pocket and stood on the sidewalk for a moment, watching the traffic on Trumbull Street move through the intersection at its usual, indifferent pace. The city did what cities do. It continued. She pulled her coat a little closer and walked back toward the building and thought that Friday was 4 days away and that 4 days was a perfectly reasonable distance. The restaurant on Farmington Avenue looked the same as it had 3 weeks earlier. The same low light, the same white tablecloths, the same warm amber wash over the room that made everything inside it seem a little more consequential than it might have appeared in daylight. The host remembered Claire. He led her to table 7 without being asked. She arrived first. She sat with her hands around a glass of water and did not look at her phone. She had thought about what she wanted to say tonight. Not scripts, she did not write scripts for things that mattered, but intentions. The shape of what she wanted the evening to be. Marcus came through the door at 7:02. He had traded the flannel shirt for a dark button-down, and he moved through the restaurant with the ease of someone who was not performing comfort, but actually possessed it. When he saw her at the table, he stopped for just a moment, not from hesitation, but from the brief adjustment a person makes when something they have anticipated has arrived and turned out to be real. He sat down across from her. Neither of them said anything right away. The silence was not like the silence of their first dinner, which had been careful, strategic, full of edges. This one was different. It had weight to it, but the weight was not uncomfortable. It was the weight of things that had actually happened. "Same table," Marcus said. "I asked for it," Claire said. He looked at her. "Why?" She thought about it. "Because the first time I sat down at this table it was by accident," she said. "I wanted to come back on purpose." The waiter appeared, and they ordered, and the evening settled into itself the way evenings do when neither person has an agenda beyond being present. They talked about Lily, about the Caldwell Street project and how it was progressing, about the small mechanics of each other's days. Marcus told her about Danny, his lead electrician, who had recently started dating the project manager from the general contractor's side, which Hector had expressed concerns about, and which Marcus found more or less inevitable given that they worked 12 feet apart every day. Claire laughed at this, really laughed, and it was the same laugh she had produced the afternoon of the orange paint, sudden and genuine and briefly unguarded. Later, when the restaurant had thinned out around them and the candle between them had burned lower, Marcus set his fork down and looked at the table for a moment, before he spoke. "The night my wife died," he said. "I drove home from the hospital by myself. Lily was at my mother's. It was 3 in the morning. I sat in the driveway for about 20 minutes because I couldn't figure out what the reason was to go inside." He paused. "Not in a bad way. I want to be clear about that. Just I couldn't remember what going inside was for, who I was going in for." He looked up at her. "Then I thought about Lily waking up in the morning and I went in. And that was enough. It was enough every day after that. But it was only one thing." Claire looked at him across the table. She did not offer a reframe. She did not tell him it was understandable or that she imagined it must have been incredibly hard. She just looked at him the way she had looked at the painting in his kitchen, with full attention and without the need to fix anything. "I know what one thing feels like," she said finally. "I ran mine for 6 years. He nodded. "It's still enough," she said. "One thing. But you don't have to make it do everything." Marcus turned his water glass a quarter turn to the left and then stopped himself, and then smiled at the stopping, which she noticed. "My nervous habit," he said. "First night here I did it 3 times. I saw," she said. He looked at her. "You noticed that?" "I notice things," she said simply. They left the restaurant at 9:40. On the sidewalk outside, the cold had sharpened with the hour, and the street was quiet enough that their footsteps were audible. They walked to the corner together and stood for a moment at the intersection where their directions diverged. "Next week," Marcus said. It was not quite a question. "Next week," Claire said. She walked to her car. He walked to his. The city moved around them at its usual pace, ordinary and indifferent. And they were 2 people going home through it. And that was a different thing than it had been 3 weeks before. The next morning, Lily came downstairs before Marcus had finished his coffee and went directly to the refrigerator, where she studied its surface with the focused attention she usually reserved for art projects. Then she went to her room and came back with her markers. Marcus watched from the table. She drew for about 20 minutes, standing at the kitchen counter with the piece of paper flat in front of her, occasionally stepping back to assess. When she was done, she picked it up, looked at it once, and put it on the refrigerator door with a magnet shaped like a sunflower. She did not announce what it was. She went to get her backpack. Marcus finished his coffee, stood up, and walked to the refrigerator to look. 3 figures, a table with 2 candles, 2 people sitting across from each other, and between them, leaning against the side of the table, small but deliberate, a child with markers in her hand, looking at something outside the frame of the picture. He stood there for a moment. He did not take it down.